Coming up on Arirang News. South Korea says it'll reconsider providing weapons to Ukraine following North Korea and Russia signing a new military agreement. Putin responds that Seoul doing this would be a big mistake. The North Korean leader's powerful sister, Yo-jong, signals the regime will launch another round of trash-carrying balloons being sent to the south. This follows North Korean defectors sending anti-Pyongyang leaflets to the north yesterday. South Korea declares its population crisis a demographic national emergency. With this, we look at how the local governments are tackling the issue by helping people search for love and to hold weddings. Good evening. It's 9 p.m. here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us on Arirang News. I'm Ji-young. We start with South Korea's presidential office saying it'll reconsider providing weapons to Ukraine in response to the recent North Korea-Russia military assistance agreement. Our correspondent Oh Soo-young leads us off.
South Korea's measures to potentially send weapon support to Ukraine will depend on Russia's attitude. That's according to President Yoon Suk-yeol's office Friday, a day after Seoul announced it will reconsider its policy of sending non-lethal aid to Kyiv as North Korea and Russia signed a treaty on military and economic cooperation. Yoon's office said a variety of measures could be considered for supporting Ukraine with weapons, with specific measures to be reviewed depending on how the Kremlin responds to Seoul's position on recent developments. National Security Advisor Chang Ho-jin on Thursday delivered the South Korean government's stance after North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and Russian President Vladimir Putin agreed they would provide one another with military and other assistance in the event of aggression, with all means at disposal without delay. Condemning the pact, Chang says he sees any form of cooperation that provides direct or indirect support towards building up North Korea's military as a violation of United Nations Security Council sanctions.
Especially as a permanent member of the UN Security Council that led sanctions against North Korea, Russia's violation of its resolutions by supporting North Korea threatens our security and will inevitably harm Seoul-Moscow relations.
Since the outbreak of the war in Ukraine in 2022, South Korea has maintained a policy of providing only humanitarian aid and non-lethal military supplies to Ukraine. Chang says the government will now reconsider that policy. Seoul also plans to strengthen its sanctions regime, targeting 243 new subjects, including 4 Russian ships, 5 organizations, and 8 North Korean individuals involved in weapons and oil exchanges between the two sides. Chang said the measures were decided after a review of Pyongyang and Moscow's Comprehensive Strategic Partnership Pact released on Thursday morning, but noted all specific details had not yet fully been grasped. While the North Korean leader declared the treaty raises their partnership to an alliance, the Russian president's more subdued remarks suggest otherwise. The treaty's controversial Article 4 on mutual assistance refers to their respective domestic laws and Article 51 of the UN Charter that recognizes a state's right to self-defense. This suggests the current pact may not trigger an immediate allied intervention as a mutual defense treaty would, according to a senior official. In any case, Seoul says it will firmly respond to any actions that threaten its national security and further reinforce the South Korea-US alliance and their trilateral cooperation with Japan to neutralize North Korea's nuclear missile threats. Meanwhile, the US State Department on Thursday said it welcomes any support to Ukraine in fighting Russia's aggression, but the question of supplying weapons is each country's decision to make. Washington also expressed deep concern over Putin's threat to supply Pyongyang with weapons as a response to support for Kyiv, warning that such a move would destabilize the Korean peninsula. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
This afternoon, Seoul's foreign ministry called in a senior Russian official to protest against the new defense pact between North Korea and Russia. First Vice Foreign Minister Kim Hong-kyun called in Georgy Zinoviev, the Russian ambassador to South Korea, to explain the government's stance on the matter. He emphasized that the military assistance agreement between Russia and North Korea could worsen Seoul-Moscow diplomatic relations and called on Russia to act responsibly. Meanwhile, Russia's Vladimir Putin claims any shipment of lethal weapons to Ukraine by South Korea would be, quote, a big mistake. Our Choi Soo-hyung covers his remarks.
Russian President Vladimir Putin has warned that it will be a very big mistake if South Korea provides lethal weapons to Ukraine and that Russia will respond if it does. According to TASS and Sputnik news agencies, President Putin made this statement during a press conference in Hanoi, Vietnam on Thursday as he concluded his tour of North Korea and Vietnam. On the same day, South Korea's presidential office said it would reconsider the issue of providing weapons to Ukraine, criticizing the treaty and the comprehensive strategic partnership signed between North Korea and Russia. So far, the South Korean government has maintained a principle of not supplying lethal weapons to Ukraine. Regarding the Northern Russia signing the treaty, Putin said there's nothing new compared to the one signed in the 1960s and that South Korea does not need to worry as the military assistance only applies when either one is attacked. Putin also mentioned that Moscow has not asked Pyongyang for any support for a special military operation in Ukraine. However, he added that Russia is currently monitoring the situation as Ukraine's attacks on the border area of Belgorod with Western long-range weapons are considered an invasion. He also said that Moscow does not rule out providing Pyongyang with high-precision weapons in response to Western countries providing weapons to Ukraine. The Russian president said that while the crisis on the Korean peninsula is heating up, he hopes the treaty with North Korea and Russia will have some deterrent effect. Choi Soo-hyung, Arirang News.
The North Korean leader's powerful sister, Kim Yo-jong, signals the regime will launch another round of trash-carrying balloons being sent to the south. This follows North Korean defectors sending anti-Pyongyang leaflets to the north yesterday. Meanwhile, troops from North Korea have crossed the inter-Korean border yet again. Our defense correspondent Choi Min-jung reports.
North Korea has hinted at sending another round of trash-carrying balloons to the south in response to the delivery of anti-Pyongyang leaflets by North Korean defectors the day before. In a statement released by the regime's Korean Central News Agency on Friday, North Korean leader sister Kim Yo-jong noted that dirty toilet paper and other items were sent over the border to the north. She said that the North Korean defectors group in South Korea has done something it was told not to do, warning that things that don't need to be done will happen. On Thursday night, Fighters for a Free North Korea, an activist group comprised of North Korean defectors, sent 20 large balloons carrying anti-Pyongyang leaflets, USB drives containing South Korean drama and music, as well as $1 bills across the border. The head of the group said the deliveries would continue until North Korean leader Kim Jong-un apologizes for sending filth balloons to the south. North Korea recently launched around 1,000 balloons across the border in retaliation to the sending of anti-Pyongyang leaflets. Tensions near the inter-Korean border continue to intensify as troops from North Korea once again intruded over the military demarcation line. According to South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff on Friday, several soldiers from the north crossed the border at around 11 a.m. the day before. They immediately returned north after the South Korean military fired warning shots and aired warning messages. It's already the third crossing this month, with a similar intrusion on Tuesday and another around 2 weeks ago, when 20 to 30 troops appeared to get lost while digging soil and clearing wasteland in the DMZ. South Korea says Thursday's border crossing appears to have been accidental, as was the case in both previous instances. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
Foreign Minister Cho Tae-yeol led a high-level debate within the UN Security Council, urging for stronger council action against evolving threats in cyberspace. Lee Seung-jae has more.
The UN Security Council on Thursday convened an official meeting on cybersecurity, as North Korea has been relying on illicit cyber activities to evade UNSC sanctions and generate revenue to fund its nuclear and missile programs. The meeting is seen as being significant given rising tensions on the Korean peninsula, marking the first official UNSC meeting on the issue since June 2021. South Korean Foreign Minister Cho Tae-ar presided over the meeting as the council's rotating president. There, he said the council must confront real and present cybersecurity threats head-on, while stressing the UNSC's role in the fight.
The linkage of cyber threats and international peace and security is evident, and the Security Council has a key role to play in addressing cyber threats to fulfill its primary responsibility for maintenance of international peace and security.
Cho said the cybersecurity threat posed by North Korea is nothing new, noting that the regime systematically evades sanctions adopted by the UNSC and challenges international non-proliferation through its illicit activities. The minister cited a report of the expert panel of the Security Council's North Korea Sanctions Committee, which found that North Korea has procured 40% of the funds for the development of weapons of mass destruction through illegal cyber activities. For the UNSC to tackle cyber threats, Cho put forward a three-step approach of diagnosis, prescription, and treatment to respond to cybersecurity-related issues. South Korea, the United States, and Japan hosted an informal UNSC meeting in April on North Korea's evolving cyber threats. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Now to the ongoing medical dispute here in the country. Medical professors serving as senior doctors at one of the Big Five hospitals decided to end their walkout that began early this week amid growing patient suffering. Our An Sung-jin brings us the latest.
The tug-of-war between the government and the medical community continues. Opposing the government's plan to expand the medical school quota, medical professors at Seoul Nat'l University Hospital and its affiliate hospital began an indefinite walkout on Monday. However, the emergency committee from the hospital announced on Friday that it would end the walkout and resume medical services, with more than 73% of professors in favor of doing so. Instead, it was suggested that they should take part in a more sustainable protest, such as by monitoring policy formation and offering suggestions. However, the Emergency Committee of Medical Professors at Seongkyungwan University, which comprises of professors from Samsung Medical Center, will hold a meeting on Tuesday next week to discuss whether to suspend medical services indefinitely. Meanwhile, with the drop in medical services, which has lasted for months, patients are growing more and more concerned. The Korea Alliance of Patients Organization and Union of Korea Breast Cancer Patients are set to hold a rally at the beginning of July calling for the withdrawal of doctors' collective action, as well as the creation of preventive laws for medical service suspension and walkouts. This may become the largest rally involving patients, with more than 1,000 people expected to gather outside Posinggakbeol Pavilion in central Seoul. The Korean Health and Medical Workers Union also announced that if medical services are not normalized by the end of this month, they will launch an all-out protest. The union plans to hold a joint meeting with the board members of more than 200 medical institutions nationwide on the 27th to discuss further measures to resolve the medical dispute. It stated that healthcare workers had endured enough and is urging the government and the medical community to engage in proactive dialogue. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
South Korea is struggling with the worst fertility rate despite having more budget to tackle the demographic crisis. In line with the central government's efforts to tackle this chronic issue, local governments have their own measures to encourage young people to find love and get married. Our Kim Bo-kyung shows us more.
A demographic national emergency. Those are the words President Yoon Suk-yeol used recently to describe South Korea's low birth rate crisis. Despite the government's astronomical budget to tackle the low birth rate, the total fertility rate, the average number of expected births from a woman in her lifetime, dropped to an all-time low of 0.72 in 2023. Along with the central government's efforts to encourage people to start families, local governments too are making all-out efforts, coming up with their own ways of addressing the birth rate in their regions. One of them is Hungnam City, whose own mayor has become a matchmaker. Dubbed Solomon's Choice, a mass blind date program is being hosted by the city's government to help young people meet each other in a more natural way.
Even if young people are even considering marrying, they are too busy working and cannot actively seek chances to go out to find love. The local government's way of selecting people to join the program is fair and trustworthy, so a lot of participants seem to have trust in us.
The matchmaking program that started last year has already helped to make more than 100 couples, with one of the couples set to get married. That couple was introduced through the program in November last year and will become newlyweds in July. The groom-to-be had no hesitations about recommending the program to others.
On a one-on-one blind date, there is pressure on the guy to lead the conversation. But here, all participants arrive with the intention of actively seeking a match, so they all actively speak. Also, even if you are not into one, you can talk to another person right away, so there are more chances.
Though forming such an atmosphere for people to find love and marry might seem like a limited measure to beat the demographic crisis, an expert says it is necessary.
Against population crisis, local governments have been desperate in hosting additional and new population recently. And there are several ways to do that. First, hosting new public organizations. Second, hosting private companies. And third, promoting marriage. One common reason for not getting married will be not finding a suitable partner.
Once you find your destiny, you need to marry, which is, again, not simple. According to Statistics Korea, people in their 20s and 30s said not having enough money was the top reason for not marrying. Most of the pressure comes from buying a house, but the money needed for a wedding is also a burden. Private matchmaking company Kayan says the average cost for a wedding preparation, excluding a house, is around $45,000. What's worse is that businesses associated with weddings, including wedding halls and dress and makeup shops, do not have set prices, nor do they clearly disclose costs, making it even harder for uninformed couples. Seoul City's solution was opening public facilities for couples to use for weddings to lessen their burden.
This beautiful hanok is actually a complex cultural space promoting Oriental medicine. But it was transformed into a wedding hall for the day so a couple could have a cost-effective wedding.
Mr. Park and his bride chose this venue through the city's public wedding hall program, which is opening up a total of 28 venues for weddings. The program began during the pandemic as wedding halls closed their doors and wedding hall rental prices surged. The biggest advantage of renting public facilities is that they are cheap comparatively, and prices are transparent.
Many people choose usual wedding halls. We wanted to have a memorable, meaningful event for guests, so we chose this venue through the program. We were able to check the price transparently because they showed us the estimate and contract in detail.
Seoul City aims to expand the program, making it much cheaper for couples.
Couples prefer outdoor weddings, especially in a hanok, followed by parks and museums. We're going to have more of these venues so that more couples can easily make a reservation. In terms of the cost, the rental fee goes up to $860, but we have revised the related ordinance to make it free, starting later this year.
Such measures are seemingly better than nothing at all. However, an expert added that what was of the utmost importance was to tackle core issues.
The most important necessities for young people who want to marry is to have a house, jobs, and the money needed to raise children. Local governments need to come up with detailed benefits such as houses specially allocated for newlyweds, so that they can plan their life, marry, and have a child.
Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
Now, on the international front, deadly heat waves are sweeping across the Northern Hemisphere, killing hundreds of people in India and more than 1,000 in Saudi Arabia during the annual pilgrimage to Mecca. Cha Young-kyung has more.
According to a health ministry official from India on Tuesday, a severe heat wave across India has killed hundreds of people since March, primarily due to heat stroke as temperatures soared to 50 degrees Celsius. An Indian non-profit organization reported that as many as 192 homeless people died in New Delhi, the highest number of deaths from extreme temperatures since 2019. Tuesday night saw 35.2 degrees Celsius, the highest overnight temperature in 55 years.
In the last 2 days, we have had 22 patients with heat wave-related illnesses. Of the 22, 5 people have died due to suspected heat stroke.
In Saudi Arabia, the death toll from the sweltering heat during the annual Hajj pilgrimage to Mecca rose to more than 1,000 this year, with more than half of them being unregistered pilgrims. According to AFP, 1,081 people from 10 countries, including Egypt and Pakistan, died during the annual pilgrimage this month, mostly due to heat stroke. There are concerns that the death toll will rise as there are lots of missing people, on top of the almost 3,000 people hospitalized with heat-related conditions. Over in Europe, countries including Italy, Serbia, and Romania are seeing daytime temperatures of almost 40 degrees Celsius, with the authorities warning people not to go outside and halting work on construction sites. Moving further east into Russia, one person died and several others were injured in Moscow on Thursday due to a heavy rainstorm. The Russian capital has also seen much warmer weather than on average, with sudden changes in the weather causing serious damage and injuries. Cha Yoon-kyung, Arirang News.
The heat wave of 30 degrees Celsius or higher is continuing across the country. UV rays and ozone levels are also high too due to strong sunlight. It's easy to get heat-related illnesses in weather like this, so please refrain from outdoor activities in the middle of the day. It will rain starting with Jeju Island on the weekend. Until Sunday, up to 200 millimeters of rain is forecast on Jeju Island. The southern coast will have about 150 millimeters. Except for Seoul, there will be about 5 to 60 millimeters of rain in all parts of central region. Tomorrow, most areas will start the morning at least 20 degrees. It will move up to 29 in Seoul, Chuncheon, and Jeju. Daejeon and Gyeongju, 28 degrees. Due to high humidity, it will still feel hot even with a bit of rain. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Well, that is all for this newscast tonight. Thank you for watching. Hope everyone has a great weekend and a good night.